It's great to host you once again in this series of Dimensions in the Geopolitical Economy on Amogate Radio Communications. I'm Abiodun Abari, and your joining me is truly and well appreciated. I assure you, we are here to ensure that you get relevant and insightful analysis of the happenings, the interactions, the exchanges, and the dimensions in the geopolitical economy to enable you make optimal decisions for the continuous improvement of your organizations, helping you anticipate and mitigate supply chain disruptions, policy rollbacks and somersaults, and of course, landscape altering cultural transformations. We help you stay ready, stay ahead of competitors and competition, achieving seamless optimization of your resources, continuously bridging that gap between strategy formulation and strategy implementation, and ensuring transformational leadership in the nations across the world. And developments yesterday in Nigeria, where the President Bola Tinubu declared emergency rule in Rivers State, suspended the governor and the State House of Assembly, have not gone unnoticed, and we should understand the implications of hostilities in rivers, the potentials of disturbance in rivers, and the attendant implications of on the geopolitical economy when it comes to the oil and gas economy, global economy. What that uncertainty brings. So it's important. It's different if it's with all due respect, a state like Ekiti might not have much bearing on geopolitical economy, but when it comes to a state like Rivers, which actually impacts Nigeria's exports, which also impacts our global supply, then of course there will be impact on prices, and if prices go up, okay, those that actually negates the policy of President Trump, in trying to ensure that oil and gas prices plummet, oil and gas prices become very low, so as to reduce the inflation back home in the United States. Okay, that is actually engaging in oil drilling, oil production, pumping the oil, and codenaming that policy drill, baby drill, as popularized during the campaign. Alright. So River State is quite important in the scheme of things. Okay, and we understand that many cases that have been decided since 1979, which of course upheld the right of Nigerians to be governed properly in accordance to the law. Okay, so to that extent, it means even state governors cannot remove democratically elected local government chairpersons and replace them with appointed cronies or caretaker committees. So in the same way, the governor should be able to be removed either through resignation, impeachment, or on the ground of ill health. Okay, so as it were, there's no provision for removal or suspension of a governor on any other account aside those stipulated in the Constitution. And even legislators are not meant to be removed by any other process other than recall by their constituents. So, and even the courts have time and time again consistently interpreted the suspension or removal of legislators by any other means as illegal, as unconstitutional. Whether it's the suspension by the legislative head, okay, or in this case that we have a suspension of the State Assembly by the President through the declaration of emergency rule. Okay, so I believe that the Constitution is clear on that. So from what prism should we see the President's move, the President's declaration? There should be no controversy about the constitutional supporting the suspension of the governor and the state legislature, right? So even the pipeline bombing justification has been touted in some quarters as being orchestrated by the government in order to create a basis for the emergency rule. All right, talk about conspiracies. All right, and looking at presidents, you reckon that it was former President Obasanjo that removed or suspended Joshua Dariye, the then governor of Plateau State, when he declared emergency rule because of the violence then in Plateau. Okay, bringing in General Chris Ali retired, and then in May 2004. And also had in Ekiti State then when the impeachment of then Governor Fayose led to political impasse in the state, and President Obasanjo had to bring in retired General Adedeji Olurin, late Olurin, okay, to fill in the void at that time. Right, so in those cases the governors were suspended, but breaking away from that, in May 2013, when former President Goodluck Jonathan declared emergency rule in the Borno, Yobe and Adamawa states due to the activities of the insurgents. Okay, recall that the statement, recall that in the statement put out by its then Attorney General Adoke, who was also Justice Minister. He talked about declaration of emergency rule being more of a political weapon used to settle political scores, and that governors being chief security officers of the states, I mean, it's just a mere proclamation that in actual sense, in actual fact, they are not in charge of security. Okay, and aside the Emergency Act of 1961 that allowed the suspension of the premiers and the regional House of Assemblies, right from the 1979 Constitution, suspension of governors or the Statutory Assembly was not expressly permitted, right, to the present constitution that we're using, and that time even the Senate President David Mark did not support suspension of governors. Okay, so we reckon that the state of emergency then under Goodluck Jonathan did not cover all the local governments in the 3 states. That's also a factor to consider, but be that as it may, he did not have the governors suspended. Okay, and with the emergency rule declaration, the president must communicate the details of emergency rule, of course, to the Senate for 2/3 to ratify this declaration. Okay, and know that a major export pipeline being blown up, of course, we have effect on Nigeria's revenues and might also affect oil prices, and in the short run might try to shoot up oil prices, and reckon that oil prices have plummeted 18% since 20th January when President Trump resumed office. Okay, and I think that trend might be stopped now with what is happening in EPH. If what's happening in River States is not curtailed, if there is more violence, and if oil export is undermined in the Niger Delta, might impact oil supply, global supply, and ultimately impact prices. Okay, and the flip side for Nigeria is that Nigeria might not be able to optimize those prices because of the dip in production, because of course the oil prices that will start rising will also be as a result of the dip in production. So with the dip in production, Nigeria might not be able to fully benefit from rising oil prices, where I feel that it will just be for some time before the United States is able to pump enough oil to stop the bleeding and stop the trend and start reversing the trend, as it were. Because the interest of OPEC, and is for them to maximize oil prices, and in doing that, they try to ensure that member states adhere to quotas, supply quotas, to be able to have a grip on the pricing. Okay, so but the interest of the United States, as it's where now, the current occupier of the White House is bringing down oil prices as much as possible in order to reduce inflation back home, and with that, they will be like drilling and pumping a lot of oil, and trying to move from energy independence to energy dominance, as touted by Mr. Trump. So we look at what the kind of effects that we have on developmental states, because the oil price is already plummeting. Already had developmental states and states and Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states trying to get alternative funding, to fund their ambitions, especially those who are involved in the sports diplomacy. Recall the Riyadh season and other ambitious projects in the Gulf area. All right, so with oil prices temporarily set to rise, and that may just be sort of reprieve, and but ultimately, I believe that the United States will still drill and pump enough oil to begin the trend of bringing down oil prices. Okay, but I believe that if the crisis in river states, is not curtailed, and that the supply, that cut in supply, and this uncertainty, that will bring about, will actually affect oil prices. So, of course, when we talk about emergency rule, there should be procedures to follow, conditions that are allowed by the Constitution. In the case of war or external aggression against the country, against Nigeria, when there's a breakdown of law and order. Alright, so should we see this as a case of abuse of the Constitution? Or is the bombing of the export pipeline enough ground for the declaration of emergency rule in Rivers State? Okay, we understand the local politics in that the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, and the now suspended Governor, Simi Fubara, talking about the power struggle between the two gladiators, and which has this has been on since about the inauguration about almost 2 years ago. Okay, and leading to the members of the States of our Assembly sort of cross-carpeting, and the declarations by the courts, and the back and forth, involving the president, and the president himself complained in a speech that despite his intervention, that the gladiators did not sheath their swords. But I believe that the president shot himself in the foot, by that statement, for not holding his minister, his appointee, the weakest feet to the fire, but practically carried water for him in the crisis. Someone he has direct control over, but decided to condone his recalcitrance and adopt a measure that actually deprives the other party of political power. So no consequences for the guy on his side who has not told the line of his directive. At least the president has complained in the public speech. Okay, and so no consequence. What's going to be the consequence for Mr. Minister, for the Honorable Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike? Since the president has publicly complained that the gladiators did not follow his directive. Now that similarly Fubara, the suspended governor, is now being stripped of his political powers, what will be the consequence for Nyesom Wike? This is important because when there is a perception of an injustice, it's actually a recipe for violence, a recipe for unrest. People want to be able to get even, as aware. They want to be able to fight for their rights, and they want to be able to fight against oppression. And when they feel oppressed, they might even go the whole hog. I mean, risking their lives, and not not worrying about the consequences. Want to do and facing the consequences later. That's actually a thrashing game theory. So, talking about the reaction of the governor's camp, all right? The reaction of the Ijaw people, Ijaw people saying that yes, there's their time at the leadership of the states, seeing their time at the helm being truncated, albeit temporarily, but their time being undermined. Okay, so will militancy return to the Niger Delta? Alright, will the emergency rule be an excuse, a justification for resumption of militant hostilities and violent engagement with the oil and gas setup? So we recall that at the time, production fell to about 400,000 barrels per day during President Buhari's administration. That was way after President Yar'Adua had done a lot to achieve peace through strength, and consolidating with the amnesty program, and now defunct Ministry of the Niger Delta, okay, and making the Ministry of Niger Delta sort of expunging that the Ministry of Niger Delta from the cabinet will that also be an excuse, for the job people and generally, Niger Delta people to resume violence, causing disruptions to all exports and impacting the global supply and global prices. Right? So the uncertainty, like I said, this scenario brings will definitely impact our markets. Short run, before the US drills and pumps enough oil to start reversing the trend. Okay, OPEC countries want to maximize what they have. All right, and so they try to use quota to rationalize production and all that. So Nigeria might, unfortunately, like I said, not be profiting as much as it should from rising prices, since production will have been well impacted. Of course, it's the disruption in production that would account for increasing prices. So we keep a close watch on that and see how as events unfold and as things unravel, and look at the impacts on the geopolitical economy, so that we can be proactive in making these right decisions for your organizations. And important to mention Israel's resumption of bombings in the Gaza. This was actually expected, as the deadline given by President Trump to Hamas to release the remaining hostages expired, calling him, saying all hell will be let loose. I'm talking about peace through strength. So let's see what game Hamas is playing. Of course, Hamas, I expect a military response from Hamas, and with that mean resumption of hostilities that in the Middle East, and will Hezbollah sympathize? All right, and what role will Iran play? I recall that President Trump is now putting a lot of pressure on Iran. Okay, and President Trump and President Putin's telephone conversation yesterday, that over an hour's conversation, talking about a range of topics, and they agreed to a limited ceasefire on the targeting of energy infrastructure, okay, and of course maritime. All right, talking about the Black Sea. All right, so further talks will continue, of course, and this is as Ukraine launched dozens of drones overnight into Russian territory, targeting energy infrastructure and the debris causing damage at an oil depot. So is Ukraine trying to create some sort of a background of that there's no progress in the peace process, or trying to get a leverage in negotiations, So the United States President Donald Trump also said that the call was good and productive, and confirmed that both men agreed to an immediate energy infrastructure ceasefire, and agreed to work quickly to have a complete ceasefire and ultimately an end to the conflict. So he said that many elements of the contract of peace were discussed as, and I quote, the peace process is now in the full force and effects, and will hopefully, for the sake of humanity, get the job done. End of quote. So Russia and Ukraine also having a prisoner swap today, 175 for 175. So it shows that yes, we're doing that part of peace rapidly, and talking about Trump's initiative on maritime security, talking about the Black Sea, cessation of hostilities in the Black Sea. That will also have some effect on the maritime economy, some expansion, okay, on the maritime economy, and help to bring down costs and improve our productivity or GDP, of course, impacting the geopolitical economy, and allowing other players, okay, into the fray. So, and Russia is actually concerned that if there's a 30-day cessation of hostilities, that what will be happening during those 30 days, that they don't want a kind of a recurrence of the Minsk agreement, where it was just a stopgap, like a kind of a kick the can down the road moment, meant to allow Ukraine to arm itself. That they don't want that kind of thing, that during the ceasefire period there should be cessation of military aid and intelligence to Ukraine, no conscription, no training, no weapons, and so on. So, and of course, we must recognize the role of someone I like to call negotiator extraordinaire, Steve Witkoff, playing a key role, and he actually met with the Russian president, smoothing rough edges before that very important phone call yesterday. I recall that even the Russians asked the United States to step down Keith Kellogg's. Keith Kellogg's was actually the major person in the Russia-Ukraine debacle for the U.S., but Russia complained about his pro-Ukraine stance, and so he was actually asked to focus on Kiev, while Steve Witkoff was drafted to Moscow, and Steve Witkoff has actually done a very, very good job. All right, so we are for world peace, and I'm happy that we are moving toward peace in Eastern Europe. So also the attempted incursions into the Belgorod region of Russia yesterday too, involving 200 soldiers and 29 pieces of military hardware. Yes, they were repelled, and they lost about 60 servicemen, 1 tank, 3 military preacher vehicles, and about 7 other armored units. So maybe I think Ukraine wants to use that leverage in negotiations, trying to get land, territory in Russia, maybe to be able to negotiate and exchange for territory that Russia has in Ukraine. And you also understand that the Kursk region, where Ukraine made that incursion, of course, last year, Ukraine has actually been driven out until about 90%. Maybe they are holding less than 10% in Russian territory now, and even the major town of Suza that they are holding and has been regained by Russia. So Russia claims Ukraine wanted to create a negative background for the Trump-Putin talks. That was why they made that incursion yesterday. Well, that's their opinion. And Russia, as a measure of goodwill, as a gesture of goodwill, be handing over 23 seriously wounded Ukrainian servicemen to Kiev. Okay, those are low-hanging fruits of the peace process that is in progress, and we thank all parties for that. I'm talking about the activities in Yemen, where the United States has been delivering strikes on the Houthis in Yemen. You recall that Houthis have been attacking the maritime economy in the last 18 months, and actually attacked the U.S. Navy about 144 times, 147 times rather. The Houthis have attacked them, and that impact on the maritime corridor. And the ships have to go around and have to go through the southern corridor, and incurring more time and incurring higher costs, and that's actually impacting the maritime economy, negatively. And the Houthis in Yemen have been responsible for this, and they are proxies for the Iranian regime, for the regime in Tehran, because they have been funded, and they have been supplied weapons and their logistics and training by Iran. So even President Trump is putting a lot of pressure on Iran now to stop the funding and the weapons, funding of weapons and logistics and training of the Houthis, and this actually talking stuff on that. Recall that the Iranian regime refers to the axis of Hamas in Palestine, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen, and the Shiite militants in Iraq and Syria, referring to them as the axis of resistance, while other people that don't fasten them refer to them as the axis of evil. So it's no secret that Iran is behind this process, so to speak. Okay, so the United States has said it's going to continue pummeling the Houthis until they stop attacking maritime, the economy, and so that ships and vessels can able to pass through that corridor, peacefully. And we also have, like I said, the resumption of hostilities in Gaza. Israel bombing Gaza, and with the United States support, because President Trump wants the remaining hostages released, and Hamas is actually for dragging on that. So we're on the lookout to continue to monitor Hamas's response to the strikes in Gaza, as we also try to look at the response of the Houthis, because at the time of this recording there was reports that the Houthis were firing missiles into Israel, and they were actually siren raids, alerting people to get into the bunker to be safe from incoming missiles. Yes, so thank you for being with me on this episode, and next episode, which will be the last for the quarter, before we go on to a new quarter, we'll be talking about the optimizing opportunities in the Ethiopian banking sector. Ethiopian opened up the banking sector with the banking proclamation by the NBE, National Bank of Ethiopia, in December 2024. So looking at the opportunities and how they can be optimized, looking at that next quarter. But next week we will just look at the geopolitics involving the Taiwan, Taiwan, the US, United States, and Europe, and the entire world, but with Taiwan at the center, and Chinese ambitions to unite Taiwan with mainland China, okay, which Taiwan they refer to as Chinese Taipei. Okay, so, and of course, the United States has the one China policy. Alright, so, and at times they just mouth it and don't act it when they choose, when it interests them to do so. Alright, so we're looking at all this the next episode, which will be the last for the quarter. So thank you so much for joining me today. But please do remember that at Armorgate, we are always ready to help and support your organizations to work optimally, creating frameworks and processes for optimization of resources and attainment of goals. You can contact us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram at Armorgate. You can also visit our website at www.thearmorgate.org. Our email is contact@theharmogate.org. I hope the time that we spent together has been impactful, and I can assure you, from my own end, it's been a pleasure. Until I come up on your devices again, it's bye for now, and God bless you.